Hi, Ramon.
Hey, hi, Tatiana.
No, it's Linda.
Oh, Linda, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Oh, fine, fine.
Hi,
Ramon. I'm here as well, but you can't see.
Yeah.
Slide.
I saw you were on.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Philippe.
Hello, Philippe.
Does he have his thing on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. How are you?
Oh, wonderful.
Good.
Very nice.
We were looking at your book with Christoph over the weekend, and he was very impressed.
Oh, thank you. So nice of you. I'm very happy. Yes.
Yes. We have to have our session where we discuss it together.
Yeah, you know, I was
Everybody has
invited
time to read it.
I was invited by the Department of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Cassis has been very interested in the book, and they invited me for a discussion because they are just now setting up a new strategy on China.
Oh, great.
And they've been looking into my book, and they wanted to have a discussion with me to discuss various aspects. So the book is very timely for our Department of Foreign Affairs.
Hi, Philippe.
Hello, Tatiana.
Hello, Mirko. I see you're installed.
I am indeed. Wait. Hello. Do you hear me? And do you see me?
Yes, we do.
We can hear you.
And do you see me?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay. I don't see me, so it's okay. But it's not important that I see me. Important is I see you. Everything. Hi, Philip.
Hello,
how are
Mirko.
you?
It's great to see you.
Can say the same. Everything is okay.
Yes.
Wonderful.
We have just over 5 minutes to go until the start. And then
very good.
I would like to ask everyone to switch off the cameras and mute the microphones except for Ramon. And we're still.
Yes.
Why me? Am I the opening speaker? I thought someone else was. Wasn't it you?
No, you are.
I am? It's not you?
Yes, I am, but I'm not a speaker. I'm just the host.
Yeah.
And,
so just to be sure, I switched off my video. Can you confirm that you don't see me anymore, but you can read me?
Yes. We
okay, wonderful.
That.
Perfect.
I'm trying to switch off my video, but I don't see where I can do it here.
The camera icon is on the bottom.
Oh, I see. Now, arrêtez la vidéo. Okay, now that should be okay.
That's right.
And I'm shutting down my...
Everyone is slowly coming on board. That's wonderful. We are still missing Thomas, but I see Martina is here. That's great. Hi, Hervé. Good to
Hi,
see you.
do you hear me?
I can see and hear you perfectly.
Okay, that's great. So that's fine. Thanks.
See you later.
Hello, Tatiana, Cedric. Just say hi.
Hello, Cedric. Good to have you on board.
Perfect. Okay, I'm shutting camera and microphone off and see you later.
See you in a little while. It's 2 o'clock. Let's start. Buenos dias. Bon dia. Grüezi miteinander. And welcome to our Latin America Day. a virtual event. My name is Tatiana Gaspar, and I'm very pleased to be your host today. It has been a somewhat bumpy road to get here. Initially, we had planned to hold a real event and give all our participants the opportunity to network. Unfortunately, recent new restrictions in connection with Corona safety measures forced us to recalibrate our plan. That was what we have been doing over the past couple of weeks. So here we are, and I'm very pleased and grateful that our fantastic speakers are still all on board and looking forward to this virtual experience with us. Our diversified program, which will last over 3 hours today, includes relevant contributions from politics, economy, finance, business, and social responsibility. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank our sponsor, Switzerland Global Enterprise, for supporting us very generously throughout this journey. This entire webinar will be recorded. Those who miss part or all of it today can watch the recording later. It will be posted on our website. And now I'm very pleased to introduce our two first speakers, Ramon Esteve, President of our chamber, followed by Thomas Först, Head of Global Network at Switzerland Global Enterprise. I see Thomas has not yet joined. He will probably do so in the next few minutes. So Ramon, go ahead. Why don't you start? Unmute your microphone, please.
Thank you, Tatiana. Excellencies, members of the Swiss government, and my fellow members of the Chamber, welcome to our first virtual Latin American Day event. We are near the first anniversary of the advent of this sinister sanitary crisis, and it has been said frequently that we are at a tipping point. But at a tipping point towards what? I have no crystal ball. It is anyone's guess where we will revert to our old ways and where we will have to adapt to a new normal, whatever that may be. Compounding the problem, to protect their fragile economies that were still recovering from the economic crisis of 2008, countries have become more nationalistic and sadly, at least in some countries, more xenophobic. And yet, it is free trade that has elevated millions out of poverty over the last 20 years, the greatest leap in the development of human history. The current environmental movement does not help us either. Though some intentions are noble, there are also some that are unrealistic and promote isolationism. The three combined are negatively impacting trade to various degrees. Some industries have thrived in this mess, typically all goods and services offered over the internet, and countries are looking for ways to tap into this new potential source of very needed revenue. But there is an ongoing impact, mainly negative, on our traditional businesses, and many are suffering and trying to redefine their business models. So what can our chamber do in this brave new world? Most of our offering has also moved online. I find the content of our webinars has been fantastic. We have been able to retain speakers that it would be extremely difficult to have in person, even under the best of circumstances. But I still look forward to the day where we can have personal networking events again. Chambers of commerce exist to promote commerce, not only the exchange of ideas. We need to see how we can better support Swiss companies proposing their goods and services in Latin America, and how to support Latin American companies wanting to access our market. We need creative ideas. And I would like to suggest a working group of the commercial attachés of the various embassies to work with our executive committee and interested members to develop these. LATCAM is also in the process of establishing new connections or revive and strengthen old ones with other Swiss associations such as Économie Suisse. There's a huge Latin American community in Geneva, and we need to see how we can include them. It is time for us to venture out, diversify our offering in order to be able to fulfill the expectations of the different categories of members and constituents that we have. Our executive committee has several different projects in the pipeline for 2021. Maybe worse than the pandemic are all the new trade wars that we are experiencing. Will we revert to a more civilized multilateral system that we've had in the past? Or will we tip towards more isolationism? I very much look forward to hearing the views of Roberto Acevedo, past director of the WTO, who towards the middle of this month has been willing to address us. And I hope many of you can join us. I would not be complete without a short discussion of current events in Switzerland, and I would like to share my personal opinion on the Responsible Business Initiative. I think this is important because it's not only Swiss politics. I think this will have an impact on our trading partners also. As you know, we Swiss vote frequently on constitutional amendments, referendums, and elections at 3 levels of government. At the end of November, we will be voting on a constitutional amendment requiring Swiss-based enterprises to be responsible before Swiss courts for the actions of their affiliates and/or substantial suppliers throughout the world in matters relating to human rights and the environment. Since it is a constitutional norm, the text to be voted is quite general. Should it pass, one will have to wait for the implementation statute to understand the exact scope of what companies will have to comply with. Should the initiative be rejected, a very adequate counterproposal to the initiative aligned with European rules has already been voted by Parliament and would automatically enter into force. Nobody contests the need for all corporations to perform diligence and be responsible. It is not this premise that I object to, but the legal remedies proposed by the initiative. The initiative creates a primary forum to sue the Swiss parent in Switzerland. So a corporation could find itself defending 2 lawsuits, one in Switzerland and one in the country where the problem may have occurred, leading to a conflict of jurisdiction between the 2 countries and possible diplomatic incidents. When a Swiss court usurps the competencies of another nation's court system, it is far from certain that the injunctions of a Swiss court will be properly notified to all parties in the other nation through the diplomatic channels as required. All this is complicated by the reversal of the burden of proof. The Swiss parent will have to demonstrate that it has exercised proper diligence upstream in its supply chain should an event occur. But the appreciation of what is sufficient is still left to the discretion of a Swiss judge. Should there be an alleged abuse, it is easy for a judge to conclude that the diligence was deficient. There is nothing companies dislike more than legal uncertainties, and this is what this initiative creates. Also, as explained by Madame Keller-Sutter, there is a certain arrogance to pretend that our courts will judge more competently than a court abroad. From my own perspective, I find that Swiss companies are already among those acting the most responsibly in the world. They are very significant vectors for development in emerging markets, and the Swiss voters should be proud of their companies rather than shackling them with such a system. I hope you enjoyed today's event and that you will join us in future webinars from your confinement pending a vaccine. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Thomas. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you, Tatiana. Thank you.
Thank you. I already acknowledged and thanked Switzerland Global Enterprise for the generous sponsorship of this event. And now the floor is yours for your message from the sponsor.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Dear Mr. President, dear Ramon, and the whole board of the Latin American Chamber of Commerce and your CEO, Tatiana, for having us again this year. We are a proud sponsor, and not only a sponsor, but a strong partner for several years now with the Chamber. And thanks again for organizing this virtual format, which is the new normal. I think this gives all of us a great opportunity today to participate and to talk about Latin America and the opportunities in that market, which is so important to all of us. As you may know, SGE operates in Latin America, mainly in Mexico, Brazil, and Chile, but also in all other countries with the Chambers of Commerce, the bilateral Chambers of Commerce, which are our backbone in serving our clients. And we do so relying on that strong network together with the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs locally, but also here in Switzerland with the LATCAM as one of our partners. Today, we're all here as Team Switzerland for Latin America, and we're very happy that this team is growing stronger by the year or by the month. In this event and a great agenda, thank you for putting this together, Tatiana. We'll have a unique chance to get insights regarding Latin America from various perspectives, political and economic relations from our partners, EAER, SECO, also the financial outlook, which I'm very much looking forward to, and first-hand experience from companies, testimonials, which have worked with us recently in the region. And that's always so precious to hear entrepreneurs to speak about their experience and give insights into their path and their endeavor. We can all learn from each other with our experiences, and together as one team promote Latin America in the Swiss economy and vice versa, and position Switzerland locally on top of the Latin American companies, also having a lot of interesting companies from Latin America being here represented in Switzerland. This is especially important in these times of crisis, where opportunities are not so easy to see and not so easy to grasp. And Latin America has a strong record when it comes to managing crisis and demonstrating resilience and always coming back even stronger and being able to dealing with challenges. The pandemic has had a strong impact on any economy, but also even in crisis, we can get stronger and be better than before. It is important to also acknowledge the opportunities as crisis can bring, and Latin America's diversity presents many different scenarios and opportunities, and we have a lot of interesting success stories who are active in that area. For example, also the substantial increase in the e-commerce field, a lot of new players in that area, which offer a great potential for that region and in that region. And now that the pandemic is fueling fiscal deficits everywhere, there will be even a greater need for private investment, for example, in infrastructure with the aim for stronger regional integration. The governments that embrace the private sector and coordinate via partnership are interesting to us. And we know that there's also some first efforts being done here to pool more those suppliers here in Switzerland to approach the infrastructure industry in Latin America, which we're very proud of. At the moment, with the travel restriction, Latin America is just as near as our neighboring markets, and new digital tools and offerings will hopefully keep short that virtual distance and also help in the pandemic to build bridges and connect us together. All these examples which I've cited show that in times of crisis, also new opportunities arise for the region, which we all can grasp together. And I'm very much excited to have all the Latin American chambers also participating in regular calls recently, also unifying forces and talking about business opportunities amongst them in order to approach these. And thank you also, Tatiana, for spearheading this initiative and bringing these chambers together and making them even stronger. So to close, I'm very much looking forward to the event today and the speakers, and thank you once again for being able to participate and partnering up with you. And I think this is 1 year in many of years to come where this partnership can grow. Thank you very much. Tatiana, back to you.
Thank you, Thomas. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to many other projects that we can do together in the future. So now the bilateral chambers, I say hi to Esteban, who is already connecting. It's not quite your time yet. The bilateral chambers in Latin America, as Thomas first said, are our partners, important partners. They have always been part of the Latin America Day. We will now watch a short video message that they prepared together for this occasion. So let's hope I can do this technically. Here we go.
Las 12 cámaras de comercio suizas en Latinoamérica, Swiss Chambers LATAM, saludan a las y los participantes del Latin American Day 2020 y lamentamos mucho no poder acompañarlos en persona este año.
Representamos empresas suizas y locales en toda América Latina, en Argentina, Brasil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, México, Panamá, Paraguay, Perú, Uruguay y Venezuela.
Las empresas suizas provienen de los sectores de alimento, infraestructura, farmacéutico, financieros, servicios e indústria, entre outros.
Suíça é o país número 1 no ranking de inovação e dos mais competitivos no mundo.
Las empresas suizas invierten en nuestros países y contribuyen a la generación de empleos de alta calidad.
Cualquiera sea su destino, si es en América Latina, las cámaras de comercio suizas podrán ayudarlo a extender sus vínculos en la región y facilitarle así su ingreso a la comunidad de negocios.
Además, con el apoyo del sector privado, suizo y local, promovemos la formación dual suiza en varios países de América Latina con excelentes resultados.
Algunas cámaras suizas se encuentran en la región desde hace ya más de 70 años. Otras se acaban de inaugurar.
Varios países en América Latina ya cuentan con tratados de libre comercio con la Asociación Europea de Libre Comercio, de la cual Suiza forma parte, y otros países se encuentran negociándolos o están por entrar en vigor.
Incrementará el comercio y la inversión suiza en los diferentes países latinoamericanos.
En colaboración, las cámaras suizas en América Latina trabajamos unidas para representar las empresas suizas de la región.
Las cámaras suizas en Latinoamérica, unidas, presentes hoy en el LATAM Day 2020.
So that's a greeting from the bilateral chambers. And now it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Esteban Polidura from Julius, who will give us the financial outlook for Latin America post-COVID-19. At the end of his presentation, there will be time for a few questions. You can write them, please, in the Q&A section. Welcome, Esteban, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. And on behalf of Julius, I thank LATCAM for the for the invitation. It's always a pleasure for me to be here with you and to share with the people that join us, with your participants, some of our thoughts regarding the outlook, not only for the world, but especially for Latin America. So if you can help me, Tatiana, with the slides, I would greatly appreciate it. And I think before going into details about the outlook for the region, it makes sense probably to speak a little bit about the world and what we are expecting for the world. So probably you're working on the slides, Tatiana. I don't see them.
You want me to put them now? Yes.
If you can help me with that, sure. Excellent. Then I think you can go already to the third one, I believe it is. Thank you. Yeah, so I was saying that probably before engaging into a detailed conversation, that's the one, into a detailed conversation about our outlook for Latin America, it is worth for us to stop and spend just a couple of minutes discussing a little bit of what we expect for the world, where we come from, and why we expect such strange growth trends like the ones you can see here in front of you. And let me start by saying that this crisis that we have lived, and that most likely we continue to live in different degrees of intensity, this crisis is very different to the ones we have lived in the past. And the reason is very simple. Most of the crises in the past were the result and have been the result of systemic risk. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, for example, giving and granting credit too easily and to people and to companies that they should not have received that credit, or putting, again, in a very easy way in front of potential investors, different type of financial instruments that merit a more sophisticated investor or a higher degree of knowledge. Or speaking about systemic risk, we can also mention many speculative bubbles that we have lived in the past. Anyway, those are the examples of most crises in the past. But this one is different because this one has been the result of an external shock, a shock that we all know very well, COVID-19, and a shock really generated due to the decision coming from all governments basically to stop and try to contain the spread of the virus with different measures. But basically the key word here is to stop, to close the economies. So I start with this because you can very easily see that the low point reached around June, July, May for some, even May for a few economies. The low point was able to really change, and we were able to see a very marked bounce back simply because some of the economies and most of the economies returned to a scenario of close to normality, let's say. In other words, the economies reopened again, some of the services, some of the industries, some factories, etc. And that decision alone was responsible to a great extent for this very marked bounce back. But going forward, we believe the recovery will be more difficult, will be harder. And this is simply because from now on, you will have to see all these stimuli that have been announced really impacting the economies, the money really being spent wisely and intelligently. And therefore, from now on, you should see different growth patterns. But in essence, most of the economies bounced back. And now the tough part begins. If we can go to the next one, please, Tatiana. Clearly, to speak about the recovery, and here you can see our three scenarios. To speak about recovery, we cannot avoid the question about the potential extreme scenarios. So in the middle, you can see here our base case scenario with the 75% the probability, and that scenario is basically what you already saw in the chart that I just showed. But let's speak also about the potential extreme scenarios. So one, systemic crisis, and the other one, a swift recovery. Both, you can see, according to our estimates, have a low chance of happening, but nevertheless, it's worth speaking about them. Let's start with the ugly one, systemic risk. There you can see that the systemic risk, and therefore, again, GDP contraction next year can happen if we see two things, basically. One, a very intense and aggressive second wave of COVID-19. And second, policy mistakes. Now let's speak about the nice scenario, no? The swift recovery. Here, basically, you would see the economies recovering much faster than this year and potentially depicting faster growth next year. And that's pretty much dependent on this second wave not being as aggressive as feared. And second, again, the stimuli really having an impact on consumption and on manufacturing and services activities. Perfect. Let's go to the next slide, please. This picture that I have been showing so far is really an average one, a picture for the world in general. But here you can see that the emerging markets seem to be a bit more vulnerable than some of the developed economies, basically because of tighter budgets or rising debt to GDP, or also diminishing reserves. Anyway, there are several things. Even trade can be one of the issues. But what you can see is that for emerging markets, the challenges are different, and for some of the economies in emerging markets, the challenges are even difficult to solve within the next 12 months. Perfect. So with this picture, I think we can go into our Latin American outlook. You can advance 2 slides, please. Thank you. For Latin America, and basically in line with what I was saying for emerging economies, for Latin America, we have a very, I would say, particular situation. First, we have all these challenges that you see impacting the rest of the economies in the world. But in addition, we have an environment of low commodity prices, which affects our region more than many other. And second, also a political and social environment that's probably far from ideal. You know, we could spend hours speaking about each of the main countries in the region, and we will probably discuss several topics related to politics and to the social environment. But in general, we know that this environment is in some cases even unstable and tends to have an impact on investor confidence. Now, if you add to this mix the rising problem of infections worldwide, and what we could potentially see for Latin America going forward, then I think we get a good picture of how smart we need to be when investing in Latin America in the next few months. And clearly here you have very different reactions to how this second wave of infections should be handled. You have countries that have decided to go into preemptive shutdowns and also to be a bit more proactive in trying to contain the virus before it is again a new problem. And then you have other countries that have adopted a more relaxed stance toward this, and that therefore could potentially be more affected. Let's hope not, but again, just be mindful that the strategies to contain this second wave are again materially different. If we can go to the next slide, please, Tatiana. One problem that needs to be dealt with is, yes, COVID-19, and then the other one, which is different in Latin America than in other regions in the world, is the fiscal situation for many countries. Unfortunately, Latin America doesn't have the situation that, for example, the US or the Eurozone have, which they can really control their cash flows and how much money they really print or buy back, etc. In Latin America's case, this is not true, and therefore there tend to be material pressures on the fiscal side. Moreover, there is also a general call from investors for a fiscal consolidation. That's a problem. That's a problem. Why? Because many countries and most countries are struggling again to keep the finances from deteriorating, at the same time with huge pressure to announce and execute stimuli that move the economy and that bring the economy back to pre-pandemic levels. And then, of course, politics, again, huge social pressures for money to be spent, and politicians that need to keep their voters happy. So in Latin America, again, the fiscal story of the equation is very important. Perfect. I think we can go now into a few minutes on our outlook for the specific major economies. Here you can see quickly what we are expecting for economic growth for some of these countries. And what you can, again, very easily see is that all these estimates have been coming down. And in contrast, again, to some other economies, especially the US, or let's not forget, of course, China, in contrast to those stories where growth estimates have been getting better, in Latin America as a whole, there are only very few cases where growth estimates have improved in the last few months. And that's probably the case of Brazil. But for the rest, estimates remain pretty down. And the likelihood of those numbers coming up is right now really dependent on the next couple of months, how the stimuli really impact the economy. So very quickly, if we go 2 slides forward, please, Tatiana, we can go. Yes, perfect. There, we can go quickly into each of the countries. I think for Argentina, the trick will be to start to simplify a little bit the story in the eyes of investors. On one side, you just had the entire process where bonds were renegotiated. That chapter was closed, but almost immediately, Argentina started to have a real problem with international reserves, and then also a huge effort launched by the government to close the gap between the official and unofficial FX rates. Let's not forget about some fiscal initiatives, especially to tax the wealthy. And again, the debt renegotiation process has not ended. Argentina still needs to agree with the IMF on a new program, and most likely a program that's larger than what many investors have in mind. So again, I think the trick for Argentina is really to start to simplify the story, because right now investors see several risks, and many really are trying to avoid more risks. If we can go to the next one, so to Brazil. Brazil again, the positive side of the story is that this is one of the few countries in Latin America where I have seen and where the market has seen some of the fundamentals getting better. You have already several months of economic data that shows an improvement, and that's very good. And therefore, many analysts have improved and also increased some growth forecasts for this year and next. But for Brazil, probably the main challenge is really on the political side, and then of course the connection that has with the fundamentals. And here, what I mean by this is investors are really keen and focused on Brazil not breaking the spending caps that it has announced. And that again, in a different scenario, could be more manageable. But here you have politics playing a role. The administration needs to keep people happy and voters happy, and voters are demanding more social spending. So it's difficult to try to keep this fiscal stability when you have pressures from the social side for more spending, and many politicians willing to spend and willing to even break that spend or those spending caps just to keep people happy. So Brazil, I think it is a matter of trust. Investors right now, many investors don't feel confident enough about the government's ability to keep the fiscal balances in line and to avoid spending unnecessarily. And therefore, again, for Brazil, the story is really a story about trust. Now, if we go to the next one, we can speak a little bit about Chile. Chile, as you know, is in the middle of a long process to come up with a new constitution, and the problem here is not only that the process is long, but that between now and when that new constitution is ready, Chile will have also elections, important elections, and of course there are again lots of social pressures for politicians involved in the drafting of the new constitution, politicians involved in these electoral processes that we will see in the next few months, and therefore it seems that the valuations, as you can see on this slide, really don't matter for investors. The problem here is that the lengthy process increases uncertainty, and of course, along with uncertainty, risks. We all saw how social tension can really become an issue from one day to another. And right now, I can say that from time to time, social tension starts to become an issue again. So Chile needs to go through this process. There is probably no secret recipe to do this very quick, but the investors will be very, very keen on looking at this social stability, so that the Chile story can be again one of strong finances and of growth. And finally, we can go to Mexico. Mexico is one of these stories where finances are doing okay, and the finances would allow and would have allowed the current administration to announce stimuli much larger than the ones we have seen. Just to give you an example, there are several countries in LATAM for which stimuli in this pandemic season have reached and even surpassed 10% of GDP. But for Mexico, it is really a mystery why we don't see stimuli above 2% of GDP when finances again would allow it. So of course, without the stimuli, we can also not expect higher growth or much higher growth than what we are currently seeing. So on one side, we have a story in Mexico of low growth, but also low involvement from the administration in trying to foster increased activity. That's on one side. And then on the other one, which is a bigger and more long-term issue, there is, or many investors feel that there is a question mark on the rule of law. The administration has taken several measures to try to fight the corruption. Some of those measures have been tied to, for example, canceling contracts that were already granted, or canceling projects that were already up and running, or in the middle of a construction phase, for example, canceling long-term concessions. And therefore, again, many investors feel, again, that the rule of law in Mexico is not clear. And therefore, the willingness to invest billions of dollars, for example, in new plants or factories or infrastructure, etc., are not there. And most of the government's, let's say, infrastructure spending plans going forward are really dependent on the private sector participating along with the public sector. And today, that seems to be a challenge. So I think Mexico will probably have to regain that trust before thinking of very large investments from the private sector. Today, we still see a situation where private investors are sensitive to what has been the recent past. And with that, Tatiana, I think we can go into Q&A if you agree. Yes, this slide is simply just a summary of what I said, and basically giving some investment suggestions to people that are potentially thinking of investing in LATAM, but we can discuss that in the Q&A.
Very well, Esteban. We have a question from Maria Muli. Dear Esteban, which government strategy do you consider more efficient? When government supports local importers to continue with importing and allowing countries to keep importing, Chile, Peru, or to protect the market, balance while forbidding the imports, like Argentina?
Yes, thank you for the question, because it's one where it is really tempting to say something even a little bit cliche, so like no protecting translates into deficiencies, or allowing for imports kills the domestic industry. In reality, it is not that easy. You have several industries that need to be protected simply because they are, let's say, very far away from from where competitors are. But there needs to be also a clear government plan to bring those industries to the same level where competitors are, because otherwise you will have industries that require subsidies and help forever. So there are some of these industries, but again, the help should be temporary. And then of course, there are other industries where no matter how much effort you see from local players, it will be very difficult to match the conditions that foreign competitors have, for example, on the cost side, or for example, on the connectivity side. So let me put you again a very simple example. Auto producers in Mexico. Auto producers in Mexico have access to very skilled labor, very skilled, at very competitive costs. Mexico is right next to the US, so sending auto parts to the US is as easy as really just walking a few meters from the factory and putting the auto parts on a train. And then, of course, again, this entire story translates into more efficiency for the end customer. So to answer the question, I think you have to have a mix of both. Sometimes you need to have imports because, again, your industry will never or might never be at the same level where competitors are. And the other part of the question, I think some industries deserve temporary support, but there needs to be a clear government plan to bring them up to speed.
Thank you, Esteban. We have time, I would say, for one or two more questions. Here we have one from Philip Pra from Brazil. Hi, Philip. How do you evaluate the chance for the Brazilian government to continue with the economics reforms announced by Minister Guedes in 2019?
Yes, I think very, very likely, unless something happens, which I will leave at the end of my answer, but very likely. Why? Because again, for Brazil, the economic crisis and emergency is ceasing to be an issue. So now you can have, again, government officials focusing on the many reforms that we saw being launched over the last couple of years. So on that front, I think there is, again, time and there is still willingness to go through these reforms. Now, two things worry me. First, the political calendar is becoming very intensive, and again, that again could translate into some decisions being taken that are not aligned to the best interest of the majority, for example, to passing the reforms, but to political strategies, to call it in a certain way. That's one thing that worries me. And then the other thing that worries me in Brazil, over the last couple of weeks or few weeks, we have really not seen a lot of this, but you can remember the months we had in the recent past with so many high-level government officials resigning. Yes, I cannot stop mentioning that the media has mentioned several times the possibility of Guedes resigning. I have really no way to say this is true, this is not true. I have read both sides, the sides that show how Guedes is really parting away from Bolsonaro, and then some other sources where you can see that probably they have a decent work relationship. But I fear that if Guedes were to leave, really the market reaction and the investors' reaction wouldn't be good at all. And then that could bring along a very different scenario for Brazil and for the political willingness to approve reforms.
Now we have a question from Isabel Schlug. What is the appreciation of the situation outlook of Julius Baer for Colombia?
Yes, well, Colombia has one issue that is really out of their hands, that is the entire oil sector and the entire oil story. Colombia is heavily dependent on oil, remains heavily dependent on oil. And even though we have been calling for oil prices to go up for some weeks now, you still don't see that, and you still see the very high volatility and the high uncertainty with oil and with oil prices. So unless oil prices start to stabilize and we can see a clear trend for oil prices to recover, you should not do very aggressive estimates for Colombia on the economic side. It's better to be very, very cautious. That's one. And then the other challenge that Colombia has is the high dependency for many products to have raw materials based in US dollar terms, or in other words, to have costs really tied to the US dollar. So as long as the US dollar remains strong vis-a-vis the Colombian peso, and it continues to be volatile, Colombia will be in a strange situation where inflation starts to pick up or inflation doesn't come down, and we already saw that from Banrep this last few days. Stopping the rate decrease because of inflation potentially starting to go up. So the outlook for Colombia is not a bad one, but I would say is really dependent on two stories where Colombia cannot really do a lot to control the outcome. Oil prices on one side, and oil prices are really dependent on global demand, and then the US dollar. And the US dollar story is really dependent on global risk appetite or global risk aversion. So let's see if after tonight, after the US elections, we get into a different zone of investors more relaxed, more risk appetite, a dollar losing strength, and potentially a Colombian peso and recovering, and oil prices also going up.
Esteban, I'm taking one last question from Ruben Araiza in Mexico. Hi, Ruben. As many Swiss companies set up in Mexico to serve the American market, how is the new USMCA boosting the Swiss investment in strategic industries?
The new USMCA? What is the MCA? Just to be sure.
Ruben, can you write that? What do you mean by that?
New NAFTA. Okay.
New NAFTA, here we go, Benjamin.
Perfect. So again, can you repeat the question?
Thank you very much.
Can you repeat the question, Tatiana?
As many Swiss companies set up in Mexico to serve the American market, how is the new USMCA boosting the Swiss investment in strategic industries?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, we tend to overestimate what the new trade agreement can do for companies, and we tend to overestimate it because we part from a base case that's probably not true. A base case where we imagine that during the renegotiation period, the old NAFTA and the new the old NAFTA ceased to be in place, and that therefore there were some months where very low activity. So and that was not really the case. So in other words, for Mexico, the relationship with the U.S., the trade relationship with the U.S. Remained pretty active all the time. So now with the new agreement, I think it's only fair to expect growth in line with the recent averages, with growth in line with the recent trend, and not a spike because of the new agreement. So I would say Mexican companies that are exposed to the new trade agreement should continue growing in line with the average growth rate, so nothing materially more. But where Mexico can really do something more, and I know that this is something that the government has been looking for, is to really exploit some of the other free trade agreements that Mexico has. And you will probably be surprised to hear that Mexico is one of the most globalized nations in the world. The amount of free trade agreements, bilateral agreements, and many other agreements that the country has with the different nations is really unparalleled. So I think Probably the big opportunity with Mexico is not so much with the trade agreement with the US and Canada, because I don't see anything different happening since it was signed, nor do I see anything different in Trump's or Biden's agendas. But I think there is room to really exploit some of the other trade agreements that Mexico has, especially, for example, with the Middle East or with Asia, and with that generate a very interesting delta or growth versus what we are currently seeing.
Thank you, Esteban, for this excellent and very thorough overview that you have prepared for us, and your readiness to step in at such a short notice to save my day, and then also to answer all the questions of our viewers. The slide presentation will be posted on our website for those of our viewers who want to review in detail. And we will now take a 1-minute break so that the other speakers can get ready with their cameras. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are missing one speaker. Where is he? Here they are.
It's me. I was here, but with the camera and the mic off.
Okay, it's an honor to introduce our next panelists, Ambassador Mirko Giulietti from the Secretariat of Foreign Affairs and Minister Hervé Lohr from the Secretariat of Economic Affairs, as well as this session's moderator, familiar face, Dr. Philippe Nel, Honorary Ambassador of our Chamber. A warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for being with us today. At the end of your discussion, there will again be time for a few questions, which our viewers can submit in writing. And now, gentlemen, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. As moderator of this session, I am very pleased to welcome Ambassador Mirko Giulietti. He has been posted in Mexico over the past years, and until last July, he was the Swiss ambassador to Costa Rica and also ambassador to El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Panama. He has extensive knowledge on Latin America. And also, Minister Hervé Lohr came back 1 year ago to Bern from the Swiss delegation at the OECD in Paris. He has followed closely the accession process of Costa Rica and Colombia to the OECD, as well as the application for membership of Argentina, Brazil, and Peru. In addition, the OECD has developed several programs for Latin America. So with Ambassador Giulietti and Minister Lohr, we have two experienced high officials to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on Swiss Latin American political and economic relations. Political and economic relations are very closely related. Policy response to the COVID crisis have differed across countries, across the continent, as was mentioned by Esteban Polidura a few minutes ago. The fact is that even countries with very strict lockdown measures like Peru could not avoid a large number of infections and casualties. Latin America is very diverse. I would therefore propose first to have a very short introductory statement by our two speakers, and then to travel through the continent to assess the impact of the crisis on Swiss Latin American relations for a few regions and countries. So now I have a pleasure to give the floor to Ambassador Mirko Giulietti. Mirko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Philip, and good afternoon to everyone. Let me first of all thank Ramon Esteve, the president of the board of the LATCAM, and Tatiana Gasper, the managing director of LATCAM, for inviting both the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs as well as the Secretariat of Economy. I do it on behalf of my colleague and friend, Hervé Lohr. Very briefly, I would like to show you what the Swiss presence in Latin America is, what the institutional setting that we have in Latin America. Very briefly, we have 15 embassies. We have 2 general consulates. We have two Swiss business hubs that will become 3, as Thomas Först said at the very beginning. We have, as we saw in the short video, a dozen of chambers of commerce. They are not a Swiss institution, an official institution, but anyway, they are kind of arms of Swiss companies. We have 2 Swissnex, the Center for Scientific Research, with additional 3 science counselors in Santiago, in Buenos Aires, in Brasilia. We have cooperation offices in Nicaragua, in Honduras, in Cuba, in Haiti, in Bolivia. And we have a cooperation regional hub in Lima. Pro Helvetia will soon open offices in Chile with antennas in Argentina, in Brazil, in Mexico, and Colombia. Switzerland has an observer status at the Organization of American States in Washington. We have an observer status at the Alianza del Pacífico, as well as the Caribbean community CARICOM. We do cooperate with the Sistema de la Integración Centroamericana based in Salvador, although we do not have an observer status. We are a member of the Inter-American Development Bank. Peru and Colombia are priority countries for SECO. The same 2 countries are among the largest beneficiaries of the Swiss Investment Fund for Emerging Markets worldwide. Switzerland supports financially the Centro Interamericano de Administración Tributaria, headquartered in Panama. And with Peru, we have recently signed a bilateral agreement, the first worldwide, on Article 6 on the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. A little bit complicated, but it's an important step towards a better environment. In the framework of the United Nations and international forums, we work quite a lot with the GRULAC, with the group of Latin American countries, Caribbean. We are very often like-minded. We work with them in climate change, in UN reforms, in human rights issues. But this will be more the specific of Hervé Lohr. I think 16 out of the 20 blue chips, the Swiss biggest companies, are represented and are active in South America. 10% of the Swiss citizens living abroad live in South America. So you see, we have a very broad, a very deep and differentiated presence in Latin America, going from Mexico to the Caribbean to Uruguay. And we really, if we have these institutional strong and tight presence, is because we really believe that South America is an extremely important partner for us, and this is a recognition for this fact. Thank you very much.
Hervé, you may take the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. And also from my side, good afternoon to all participants, and thank you to the Latin American Chamber of Commerce to receive us virtually today. It will not surprise you if I picture regionally and then bilaterally the situation in somehow dark tones. from what we observe right now, and that will echo somehow what Esteban as well has been saying. A number of international institutions like the OECD say the drop in GDP will bring Latin America and the Caribbean states back to levels similar to those of 2009. About 2.7 million companies are likely to close, which will potentially cause the loss of somehow 8.5 million jobs. The economic crisis mainly affects vulnerable segments of the population, as you might know. The social consequences of the crisis are somehow uneven. Maybe some words to the monetary response so far in Latin America. Latin America countries reacted quickly and adapted their fiscal regime as well as their monetary policy to soften the impact of the crisis. Without surprise, central banks have successively decreased their interest policy rate throughout the year. There is probably still room for maneuver in Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil. Other countries seem to have reached somehow their limits here. A topic that is not fashionable, but all the more important, not only in Latin America, but across the world, the issue of the accumulation of debt. Over the past years, Latin American countries have been successful in gradually decreasing their debts, and that was a great result. But because of the wide-ranging fiscal stimuli, this trend has been reversed. Projections show that debt levels are unlikely to decrease over the next few years. Turning briefly to the FDI's inflows in Latin America, absolute FDI inflows are expected to halve in 2020, resulting in a sharp decrease in the FDI annual growth rate. This trend isn't unique to Latin America, but is happening all over the world, as we can see. Finally, addressing the economic relation, the bilateral economic relation between Switzerland and Latin American countries, the total trade volume was decreasing before the crisis already. Nevertheless, there is a steeper decrease, of course, since the beginning of the crisis in February this year, lasting roughly until May. There is some recovery, some flattening on a low level. This decrease is mainly attributable to decrease in imports. Overall economic trade relation between Switzerland and Latin America have so far remained resilient during the crisis. After an initial decrease, trade volume managed to pick up again. About 75% of all Latin American imports are precious metals and gemstones, including gold and silver. We observe, nevertheless, a downward trend starting in March, and that would close my general argumentation for the start. Philippe, back to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mirko and Hervé, for your introductory remarks. I will just retain from Mirko that Switzerland is strongly represented in Latin America and works closely with Latin America on several issues, including also, for instance, the climate, as was said. And this witnesses the close ties of Switzerland, the close political, economic, and social ties with Latin America. So we have a strong basis. And from Hervé, I will retain that hundreds of Swiss companies trade and have invested in Latin America. Therefore, it's very important, this conference of today, and it's very important for Swiss company to follow closely the evolution in Latin America and the further steps that will be taken by the various countries in order to move forward and to recover. This being said, I will propose now that we start our little trip through Latin America with our large audience this afternoon. And let's start with Mexico. Let's start way up to the north. Mexico is following closely the US elections, as we all do, but this is not our topic this afternoon. Mexico is a G20 member. Mexico is an OECD member also. Mexico is the second largest economy in Latin America and has great potential with a young population. For Switzerland, it's our number 2 for exports and also for investment. And Mexico has strong ties with the United States. And Mexico, by the ties with the United States, is the largest exporter by far of manufactured products in Latin America. So this means that many Swiss firms are well established in Mexico and contribute to economic and social development. Now, speaking to Ambassador Giulietti, you spent 4 years in Mexico working at the Swiss Embassy. And what are the key features of our political relations with Mexico?
Thank you, Philip, for this question and raising the importance of Mexico, both for the region as well as for Switzerland. We have mentioned Mexico is a G20 country, is a OECD member state. So we have, particularly the OECD, for example, we have a kind of a standard setting with them, also culturally standard setting the economic issues. But more generally, with Mexico, we share a lot of common interests. With Mexico, we have, as with many Latin American countries, we have institutionalized political consultations. But with Mexico, we also have economic consultations. We also have a consultation on human rights issues. And we also have consultations on United Nations issues. This last one is very important to us as believer of a strong multilateral system, strong and equal multilateral system. Mexico plays a great role in the United Nations, being, let me say like this, a kind of a portrait, a friendly portrait of Mexico, but it can be a country of the South. It can, in 10 minutes after, a country of the North. It can be a Caribbean country in the morning and a Pacific Ocean country in the afternoon. So Mexico has this capacity to understand what's going on north, south, east, and west. So it's an extreme, it's a really a bridge builder in the United Nations or more generally in the international forums. And Switzerland has a good relationship exactly for this reason with Mexico, because we also are in a different way, but we are bridge builders among different views. Particularly on Mexican bilateral, I would say that we have a large spectrum of issues. The economic ones are very important. We have a Swiss business hub. I know that his director, Ruben Araiza, is listening to us because he just asked a question to the former speaker. We have a Chamber of Commerce in Mexico, and we have a set of bilateral agreements, kind of architecture bilateral agreements, which are very helpful to our economic relation. With Mexico, as I said, we are very much active in international forums and bilaterally. Just an example, a topic which is both multilateral as well as bilateral, the human rights issues. Mexico has been a very key actor in the creation and the setting of the Human Rights Council in Geneva, which was a joint effort of Switzerland with many other countries, but Mexico played an important role. At the same time, we have a political discussion on human rights issues in Mexico with the Mexicans, very open discussions, where we talked about difficult issues. And the Mexican, I would say, they're extremely open, and they criticize Switzerland also, but it's a very open dialogue on human rights issues. And we are working together in the specific field on a project at the moment, on a project on enforced disappearances. We also have cultural cooperation, and I mean, the list is very long. We have worked with Mexico and Central America with a triangular project, and there are quite a lot, but I don't want to prolong too much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mirko. I think you gave us a very, very good overview of our political relations with Mexico, and we see that it's very intense, it is very constructive, and it is really win-win when on each side we can gain from the other and we can move forward. Now turning to Minister Lohr, I would like to ask you on the economic side now, we are coming into the 11th month into this very, very difficult year. So how do you see our exports to Mexico during this first 9 months of the year?
Thank you, Philippe. I guess now we're back to more dry numbers, facts and figures. I will focus on the three main exports categories everyone knows looking from Switzerland in terms of exports. First, chemicals and pharmaceuticals products. They have proven to be very resilient with an increase of 12% from January to September, performing actually much better than Swiss exports to the world, plus 2.6%. That comes to no surprise, I guess, to everyone that is listening. The second, machinery registers only a slight decline of 0.2%, whilst our world export declined by 14%. Third, the precision instruments and watches have faced a massive decline of 41%, much more pronounced than the 25% decline to the world. Overall, I would say Swiss exports to Mexico have performed much better than to the world for chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and machinery. The coming months will tell us if this trend can be remained in the expectative of a second COVID-19 wave. Referring to watches, the decline is very substantial, I have to say. That's it from my side. Thank you, Philippe.
Okay, thank you very much. We take note indeed that pharmaceuticals has been and is a very strong driver of Swiss exports all around the world. It's about now 45% of total Swiss exports. And also here, Mexico is playing a very positive role for our industry with a plus of 12%. Now, Hervé, could you say me just a very few words on also in a commission, a joint economic commission established between Switzerland and Mexico, and a meeting should take place very soon. How can this commission help to promote our economic relations with Mexico?
Right. Thank you, Philippe. The Swiss-Mexican Consultative Group on Trade and Economic Cooperation has been very instrumental in advancing our trade and investment interest with regard to Mexico. We will hold indeed the next meeting by video conference on November 26th this year. As usual, representative from the federal administration, our leading private sector association, SGE, our embassy in Mexico, of course, the Swiss-Mexican Chamber of Commerce, the Mexican embassy in Bern will be participating in the meeting. The fact that we are holding this meeting in 2020 witnesses the importance attached to this forum by both sides, despite it's done by video conference, like many others vision that we can't do this year and probably for the upcoming months, as you know. To prepare the meeting, we will benefit from a very effective cooperation of the Swiss Embassy in Mexico, with Mexican Chamber of Commerce, the Swiss Business Hub, and of course, the State Secretariat for Economy of Mexico. The consultative group offers, in our view, an excellent framework to discuss the most prominent and trade and investment issues, including our existing FTA that was mentioned, the broadening of FTA or the modernization of FTAs as well, an important policy orientation of our foreign economic policy at SECO. The broader investment climate is a topic as well. Sectoral and company-specific questions, referring, for instance, to Mexican tax or regulatory regime, might be subject to discussion as well this time. The participation of representatives of the private sector is very important for both governments in order to increase their awareness of specific important policy and implementation issues. It is, of course, the interest of Mexico to attract more foreign investment and, of course, of Switzerland to smooth the way for Swiss business. We appreciate, I have to say, very much the commitment of the Mexican authorities to the consultative group and are looking forward to that discussion. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Hervé, and I wish you full success in the meeting you will hold online with the for the next Joint Economic Commission in a few weeks from now, and I had the pleasure to attend the last meeting with you in Mexico last September, and we were very impressed by the way that there were more than 25 persons on the other side of the table, on the Mexican side, and also we could discuss very, very openly all the issues that our companies had put on the table, and then add some follow-up over the following months. So it's a very constructive forum that we have here, and certainly the next meeting will enable to make further progress in our relations. Now, this being said, I would like to propose to go to Venezuela. We had a question on Venezuela, which was posed during the chat of a first speaker this afternoon. And on Venezuela, I would just like to say that despite holding the largest oil reserves in the world, the economic situation in Venezuela has been very difficult over the past years. A large number of foreign firms left Venezuela, incurring billions of dollars of losses. Some, as Allseam and Lafargue, were nationalized. With great efforts, Swiss firms had established a vocational school in a poor region in the country, offering a future to hundreds of young people with training in factories. And the collapse of the economy has weakened significantly this institution. Fini Otero from the Chamber of Commerce of Venezuela, during the welcome statement of the Chambers of Commerce, indeed mentioned vocational training by Swiss companies. And she was referring to the Henri Pittier School. Now, looking at the trade side, Swiss exports fell from 450 million francs in 2010, 450, to 30 million last year. So, Hervé, how is the trade situation in 2020?
Well, in comparison to the first 9 months of 2019, our exports have decreased by somehow 27% to 15 million Swiss francs, and our imports by 9% to 2 million Swiss francs. These figures are very, very pale compared to the peak of 460 million of exports in 2012. On the import side, Swiss purchases from Venezuela were always very low, except some years for gold. Compared to early 2010, our trade with Venezuela is becoming negligible. Several Swiss firms have incurred substantial losses and had to leave the country.
Yeah, thank you. But how do you see the perspectives now for the Swiss companies?
Well, there is no secrecy in saying that the mismanagement of the economy, nationalization, the fall of the oil price, but the oil price and commodities is a general issue in Latin America, and the ongoing political crisis in Venezuela have had devastating effects on the economy. So since 2015, the GDP has decreased by 2/3. The large budget deficit and monetary creation have led to inflation, as you know. I think that some graphs of Esteban were quite clear to the situation. For a foreseeable future, in our view, the business climate will continue to suffer from uncertainty, important difficulties to access foreign currency, high legal uncertainty, heavy bureaucracy, and failing infrastructures. The COVID-19 health crisis and Venezuelans forced to return home from other Latin American countries further exacerbate a dramatic social and economic situation. I think the picture is sadly quite clear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, the situation is extremely difficult and will remain so. I have been informed that, for instance, the United States have foreseen for next year a package of more than $200 million in order to help Venezuela, provided the economy can pick up again and some changes are being brought into the basic economic policies. Now, moving to Ambassador Giulietti, several governments have recognized Mr. Guaido as president of Venezuela. Could you tell us what is the position of Switzerland?
Thank you, Philip, for raising this question. We do not recognize governments, we do recognize states. We have had some meetings with Guaido, our colleagues at the embassy in Caracas, but he's president of the National Assembly. He has been elected president of the National Assembly. He has a central institutional role to play. So we have met him, but just for an example, the Venezuelan ambassador here in Bern is representative of the Maduro government. So for us is the official interlocutor here in Bern.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, we have been informed that the government of the United States has asked Switzerland to represent the interest in Venezuela, the US interest in Venezuela. Could you tell us where we stand in that respect?
Yes, thank you. It is a fact that the US has approached Switzerland and asked us to represent their interests, diplomatic and consular interests in Venezuela. So we have an arrangement with the United States, the United Nations, the United States, signed in April last year. Nevertheless, we are still waiting for a solution for representing the Venezuelan interests in Washington. This is still an open issue, and without solving this issue, we are not able to implement the mandate, US mandate in Caracas.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is all very clear. So I believe Swiss companies will continue to follow closely what's happening in Venezuela, but indeed, for the time being, we have to see some important changes in order to build up again confidence and to be able to contribute significantly to the recovery that this country needs and that this country will certainly deserve when the time comes. Hopefully this time will come very soon. Now we propose to you to move a bit down, to go to the Andean countries, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile. And these are 4 countries which have been strongly affected by COVID-19. Widespread informality and the presence of a broad and the absence of a broad safety net have led to critical situation in some of them. In Lima, for instance, more than 2 million people lost their job and 3 million people are back in poverty in Peru. In Colombia, the peace process has raised great hopes for socio-economic development in the areas of the country which suffered over many years from the internal conflict. The potential acceptance of a peace agreement and its implementation have proven, however, difficult. Now I would like to turn to Minister Lohr to ask him about, I think, you know, in all these difficult times, there is also sometimes some good news. And I think you have a good news for us now in terms of Ecuador. Let me hear from you, Hervé.
Thank you, I muted. So yes, right, Ecuador, we are very much pleased, you know, because we can announce that the FTA between the EFTA countries and Ecuador has been now entering into force on the first day of this month, on the 1st of November. We are absolutely convinced that this FTA is going to contribute to intensify our economic relations with Ecuador, like it always did in the past with other FTAs. So there is no reason why we should not here mark a certain success in the upcoming months, and we are looking forward to see that. The FTA between the EFTA states and Ecuador improves market access and legal certainty for the Swiss export industry on a broad basis, in particular as regards to goods, services, public procurement, and intellectual property. In various aspects, the commitment of the parties exceeds, and that's the very purpose of an FTA, of course, the WTO level.
Now, this is a great news that you bring us this afternoon, Hervé. Indeed, now we have FTAs, that is free trade agreements, with Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Chile in that part of South America. And could you tell us briefly a little bit also what is our trade situation now this year with these countries, Hervé?
Thank you, Philippe. So maybe to start with Peru. Peru is traditionally one of our most important trade partners in Latin America, mostly due to the important quantities of precious metal we import. Nevertheless, in comparison to the first 9 months of 2019, our exports have decreased by 26%, whilst our imports have decreased by 31%. Turning to maybe to Colombia, our bilateral trade with Colombia has not suffered as much as with other partner countries. In comparison to the first 9 months of 2019, our exports have increased by 4% and our imports by 17%. When it comes to Ecuador, in 2019, our exports have remained stable, while our imports have increased by 327%. This is, of course, due to larger gold imports. Finally, addressing Chile, in comparison to the first 9 months of 2019, our exports have decreased by 12% and our imports by 12%.
Thank you very much. We see that there is a big difference across countries in terms of stable exports with Ecuador or decreasing exports with the other countries. Overall, to the world, Swiss export decreased by 8.4% in the first 9 months of this year. And there is also something important taking place between Switzerland and these countries in terms of the State Secretariat of Economic Affairs, SECO's Economic Development Cooperation. We have a cooperation program which is important with Colombia and with Peru. Could you tell us a little bit what we do? Because in terms of this COVID-19 crisis, these programs could indeed contribute to help the countries harness through this crisis.
Right, Philippe, absolutely. The economies of both countries, Peru and Colombia, are struggling with low productivity and weak diversification. Diversification is a big issue, as you know, in Latin America as well. To tackle these challenges, SECO supports the development of a competitive and sustainable private sector by supporting an efficient business environment, innovation, skills development, sustainable finance, and integration into responsible global value chains. Both countries are highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change also. This is a challenge that is particularly serious for the Peruvian economy, as more than 50% of Peru's growth originates in Lima. And it is not a question whether, but when and how strongly this single most important growth hub might be struck by natural disaster. Therefore, SECO supports Peru is diversifying its growth ventures and in reducing economic dependence from Lima. We do so by assisting subnational governments in designing and executing effective and transparent economic policies, and by building up capacities and skills around urban development. Also in Colombia, many regions lag behind the capital and are from reaching an OECD, far from reaching an OECD level development. The long-lasting armed conflict made urban-rural inequalities persistent, manifesting itself in differences in public services provision across the country. So SECO tackled these challenges by supporting sustainable cities and territories, stronger institutions, and better public services. SECO also supports structurally relevant areas by transferring Swiss know-how, such as land management, which has been one of the root causes of the conflict and can potentially be a future driver for economic development, which is exactly what we are seeking there. Thank you, Philippe.
Thank you very much. No, I think this contribution is very important. It's about 15 million francs per year, which is being dispersed in various projects. And it's also a contribution and a cooperation with various government agencies to improve regimes in order to make them more efficient in terms of climate, or also in particular to improve good governance, which is so important for the rule of law and for stronger institutions. So in this COVID-19 period, the Swiss cooperation will even have more larger multiplier effects and induce effect into this economy. Now, turning to Ambassador Giulietti, the Swiss Development Corporation has a regional office in Lima, and some programs are geared toward helping the countries of the region to overcome the COVID-19 crisis. Could you tell us some about these programs?
Thank you, Philippe. Let me, first of all, very briefly tell you what the let's say, the external policy in terms of COVID, the Swiss external policy in COVID issue is, we didn't have a lot of bilateral helps and support. Switzerland believes, as I said, at the very beginning in the multilateral system. And at the very beginning of the crisis, the Swiss government released 400 million francs to the 200 million to the ICRC and 200 million to the WHO and other organizations. The efforts of Switzerland at the international level are to produce, to investigate on the vaccine, to produce the vaccine, to distribute the vaccine in an equal manner. In Latin America, the presence of the Swiss cooperation has allowed us to say restructure our portfolio, and out of 67 million Swiss francs of bilateral aid, we have allocated 20 million, more or less 20 million, to the COVID response in Latin America, specifically the countries I mentioned before, where the DSC is present. In Peru, as such, where, as you mentioned, we have the local hub of our development cooperation, we have been maybe a little bit more active. But to this COVID crisis, you have to add, in these countries that you've mentioned, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, in a less extent, but anyway, you have to add the migrant humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, which provoked the 5 million refugees or migrants into this region. So you have COVID crisis plus 5 million persons more who need humanitarian support. So we are very active also in this field, on the humanitarian side of the Venezuelan crisis. And a last point on the presence of our regional cooperation in Lima. Usually they deal with global programs on water management and on climate change, in a lesser extent on disaster risk reduction. We have a global program on health, and after this crisis, as a consequence, we will think and we will operate also in this health issue as a global program for Latin America. So we'll be active in the response of the crisis, and even more on the prevention of the next pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what you have been saying is very important, because it shows us that Switzerland, on the behalf of the Department of Foreign Affairs, is very active in Latin America, and also that we have strengthened our actions now under this COVID-19 crisis. And indeed, in particular, we must point that the Swiss company Roche is one of the leaders in the world for tests, and also that Lonza now is going to participate in the production of some vaccine, provided that they come through. And this also means that the Swiss actions and presence around the world, and also in Latin America, will and should in the coming months continue to increase. But these duties, these actions are necessary right now, and they are important, and certainly they need to be strengthened because of the significant requirements of these countries. Now, this being said, I would propose to take as the last two countries of our trip. We are going now to fly to Brazil and also to Argentina. Starting with Brazil, with 220 million people, Brazil is the 9th largest economy in the world. And Brazil plays an important role in value chains across the continent. Growth has been, however, subdued during the past years, but as the first speaker showed us, the forecasts now are not as dramatic, as serious for Brazil, with a -7% for this year. Brazil is by far the most important destination for Swiss exports, and also Swiss foreign investment in Latin America. And Argentina is an important partner for Switzerland and the third destination of our exports. So, Minister Lohr, going back to trade, how does COVID-19 affect Swiss exports now in Argentina?
Right. Thank you, Philippe. So when it comes to Brazil, I'd like to say that our bilateral trade with Brazil does not seem to have been hit too hard by the pandemic. Comparing the first 9 months of 2020 with the same period in 2019, we observed that the total bilateral trade only decreased by 8%. Exports decreased by 15% in that period compared to last year, whilst imports increased by 5.3%. However, looking at monthly data nuances this positive picture. Indeed, we see that January and February 2020 have performed better than last year. Since March 2020, there has been a significant lower bilateral trade volume, average of minus 20% less compared to 2019 for the same period. Now turning to Argentina, the bilateral trade between Switzerland and Argentina is unsurprisingly decreased. In the first 9 months of 2020 compared to 2019, exports have decreased by 13%, whilst imports decreased by 26%. Apart from March and May, where imports from Argentina to Switzerland were 17 and 120% higher than in 2019, the other months have seen sharp decreases in comparison to 2019. That would be my take for these two countries on trade.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we take note that decrease for Brazil about minus 15% and also Argentina are very, very serious. Therefore, when you will issue your next Swiss Latin America Economic Relations Report 2021, we very much look forward, but we will be very much in the red. But you know, each year is going to be different, and we are going to look forward for 2021 to come back in terms of figures for our companies. But there is another item here which interests very much our audience this afternoon. And I already saw somebody in the chat writing a couple of words. And these are the perspectives of the free trade agreement between Mercosur, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Switzerland and its EFTA partners. Could you tell us a few words of where we stand on that, Hervé?
Thank you, Philippe. Well, of course, we attach great importance to this agreement, and we are very happy to have reached an ambitious deals last August. As you know, the negotiations were concluded in substance there. However, there are still a few outstanding issues that need to be resolved before the agreement can be signed. We remain fully committed to conclude the necessary works as soon as possible, and I assume exactly the same from the Mercosur countries. In general, sustainability questions dominate the public debate about FTAs in Switzerland these days. As you have certainly noticed, a request for a referendum against our agreement with Indonesia was successful. So the whole population will have to vote on it next spring. On a side note, that would be the first time since the FTA with the European Union in 1972. The timing of the conclusion of the substantive negotiations between Mercosur and EFTA was rather, let's put it this way, unfortunate because of the fires in the Amazon region. The announcement of the agreement has therefore drawn a lot of criticism in Switzerland, as you've certainly also noticed, and continues to these days to a certain extent. Against this background, it will be, of course, crucial to underline the advantages of the EFTA-Mercosur deal, also regarding trade and sustainable development. A study by the University of Bern concludes that the agreement will only have minor environmental effect, which will be a helpful message in this regard. I would like to emphasize that an agreement with Mercosur is very important for the Swiss economy and would, of course, improve significantly our access to these markets. Latin America would also become the continent with the broadest coverage of FTA outside Europe. That has to be noticed as well. I'm pleased to note that our Mercosur partners, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, remain fully committed to the process, and we look forward to move forward next year on these important issues to add.
Thank you very much, Hervé. And what I like to say is that indeed this Mercosur agreement, it will be very, very important for Switzerland. There will be a referendum on the free trade agreement, Switzerland, EFTA, Switzerland, and Indonesia. But what we should see that it's important to sort out issues. To sort out issues, we cannot put everything in the same basket. And the discussions can take place wherever it's about the Amazon, wherever it's about palm oil with Indonesia. There are always solutions possible. And if Switzerland wants to have an impact on our foreign partners, it is if we sit at the table, but not if we are outside the room. Or with a free trade agreement, we can sit at the table because we have regular meetings with these countries. So we will need certainly the support of the business community early next year for the referendum on Indonesia, and then also for Mercosur in the Swiss Parliament, and then later if there is a referendum. But let's look ahead of us and let's look at how we can best cooperate with these partners, which for us and for our firms represent an excellent potential. And with Mercosur, Switzerland would have in Latin America the largest coverage of free trade agreement than on any continent except Europe. Absolutely. So let's go and do it. And now let me turn to Master Giulietti for my last question before we conclude, taking another few questions from Tatiana. Brazil is a political heavyweight in the world political arena. Now, in which areas do we share common positions? Where do we have different positions? How do you see the dialogue with Brazil?
Thank you, Philip. Indeed, Brazil has been defined as a priority country in our foreign policy strategy. It's the only one in Latin America. The other being the US, Turkey, Russia, China, Japan, South Africa, and I don't remember which one, but there are 8 worldwide. One is Brazil. With Brazil, again, we have a very broad realm of discussions. Just an example, this very month of November, we will have a bilateral exchange on human rights issues. We will have a bilateral exchange on political issues, and we will have a bilateral exchange on economic issues, as I mentioned. Then we have also deep discussions in science and research. The only Swiss next that we have in South America is in Rio de Janeiro with an antenna in São Paulo. We have a dialogue on taxation and finance issues. We have a dialogue, as I said, on human rights, on intellectual property. We have a lot of cooperation on legal assistance and justice. Just for an example, you know, the Lava Jato corruption case, this judicial cooperation has allowed Switzerland to repatriate $390 million since 2015, and there are a lot of money to be repatriated, and we are working on that. The judiciary are working on that I would say in a very open spirit. It is a fact that Brazil, even if we have again, like Mexico, we have good relationships with Brazil also in the international fora. We cannot deny that the present administration is a rather, let's say, a sovereignist stand rather than a multilateralist one. So they're kind of retreating a little bit from the international forums, but that's their choice. And that has not infringed, I would say, our cooperation in, as I said, on human rights issues or other important issues. We see Brazil as an important, not only economic partner, as Hervé as mentioned very clearly, but politically being really the big economy in South America. And we share a lot of common values with them, as I said, human rights, rule of law, and democracy. Maybe presently, again, as Hervé already mentioned, maybe the topic, the most delicate one is at the moment the environmental issues in the Amazon with the Amazon fires, which honestly, these topic risks to have a similar referendum action here in Switzerland against the Mercosur free trade agreement. But again, just to, in a nutshell, very good relation with Brazil with some differences as normal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like now to pass to Tatiana to ask her if there are a couple of questions from the audience that she would like to put on our two guest speakers.
Yes, Philippe. Actually, time is flying. I see that we are already running a little bit late. There is one question, and I will take it from an anonymous viewer. The issue of cooperation in economic aspects as carried out by SECO should go hand in hand with cooperation on issues for development carried out by COSUDE. So how is it understood that cooperation in the region within the framework of COSUDE is retreating?
May I, Hervé, if I may, very quickly. I would like to be very clear. COSUDE is in fact retreating, but the bilateral aid or bilateral cooperation is retreating. This will be the case for Nicaragua, for Honduras, partly for Haiti, for Bolivia, and for Cuba. Then, as I mentioned before, in Peru, we have this regional hub of the DSC. The regional hub is dealing with some what we call global programs on climate change, on health issues, on economy, and these will remain. Now, during the next 4 years, we have to think about how to transform this bilateral cooperation into economic cooperation. Do we have an interest in these 5 countries I mentioned before? Do they have an interest in our added value? These are questions that we have already on our table, and we will have to answer them in the next years. Hervé, you can certainly complete and be more precise if you want to.
No, thank you, Mirko. I think you put it to the point, and I think we have, of course, the trade and economical aspects when it comes to our relations on a bilateral level and on a multilateral level. Here we are more addressing issues on a bilateral level with the different countries and our partners, etc. But of course, I mean, the effort of Switzerland when it comes to the multilateral level are very substantial. And it's not only development aid, but it's economic development, etc. So you have the whole range from humanitarian aid to economic development to labeling, for example, when it comes to putting products on the market in partner countries, etc. It is of course that clear that the impact of the multilateral aid through big agencies is sometimes more substantial than the mere effort on the bilateral level, despite the fact that the effort on the bilateral level brings up the expertise for us as well to assess properly as well what we do on the multilateral level. So it's a very comprehensive approach of what we are doing here and what we'll certainly continue to do, enhancing probably efforts at the multilateral level in the years to come. But that's another discussion, another debate, I guess. Thank you.
Philippe, can I kindly ask you to wrap up this session so that we can...
Okay, yes, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank very much Ambassador Giulietti and Mr. Lohr for having reviewed with us the in a very comprehensive way. It was never done before in that way, where we could really review our political and economic relations with our key economic partners in Latin America. And I would just like to give you the opportunity now in one final sentence to say a short statement, and then we'll be concluding. Ambassador Giulietti.
Allow me to quote a person who knows Latin America much better than I do, who is Mario Vargas Llosa, the Literature Nobel Prize. He said once on the alternation between conservatives and progressive political forces at the power, he said, Ese es el buen camino. Y si se persevera en él, si combate la insidiosa corrupción y si sigue integrándose al mundo, América Latina dejará por fin de ser el continente del futuro y pasará a ser el continente del presente. Switzerland strongly believes that Latin America already is the continent of the present. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Minister Lohr?
Thank you, Philippe. I will be a little bit more economic dry, if I may say so, or legal approach. I think we believe, and I'm saying that after 4 years at the OECD in Paris, where I see a number of reforms. I think you alluded to that at the beginning of this presentation and exchange. We believe the efforts Latin American economies have put in diversification of their economies and strengthening their regulatory framework towards more legal certainty and more legal security will help attracting the needed and seeking investments for the American countries. I'm strongly believing in this, and I'm looking forward to go down this road. Thank you very much, Philippe.
Okay, thank you very much. This shows a great perspective for the future for Switzerland and Latin America. I thank you both, and I thank the audience, and back to you, Tatiana.
Well, thank you also from my side, Ambassador Giulietti, Minister Lohr, and Philippe, for providing such in-depth perspectives and covering so much ground in this little time that we had at this disposal. We will again take a 1-minute break just so our speakers can switch, and then we continue with company testimonials. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Our next guests represent the business world. We have lost one of them. I don't know where he is. I just saw him in the... Oh, he's still there. He's probably trying to come on board fully. There he is. Mimo Mikali from Securiton and Cedric Wilhelm from Penergetic will speak about the experience of their respective companies in Latin America. The discussion will be moderated by Martina Bietenharder from Switzerland Global Enterprise. Welcome to all of you, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, and a warm welcome to our company testimonials. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation to show us, the audience, the first-hand insights of doing business in Latin America. So first we have Penergetic, which is a family-run business operating in Latin America, mainly in Brazil, since 2001. And second, we have Securiton, a third-generation family-owned company with over 30 years of experience in Latin America. And I'm convinced that we learn a lot from your presentations and from these first-hand insights regarding how to do business in Latin America, and successes, but also difficulties, especially in these special times that we have at the moment. And also, of course, why you chose to enter the Latin American market at first place. And to the listeners, if you have any questions, as before, please use the chat, the F&A chat, and we will have some time for Q&A in between the presentations. And with this, I would like to hand over to Cedric Wilhelm from Penergetic. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you a lot, Martina. Thank you, the whole Latin American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, SG, for this opportunity that we can present our company and our story about Latin America and in special on Brazil. I will share now the presentation. You see the presentation now? Okay, perfect. So, great. My name is Cedric Wilhelm, and I'm the co-CEO of Penergetic. And today, we explain you first of all what's the company, what's the product, and then about Latin, and of course then we focus on Brazil because Brazil is our main market, and therefore we have the most experience in that market. And we will close with the key learnings from our side, what we would change, or maybe what we can give you as an experience on your entrance into Latin and Brazil. As said, Penergetic is a family company. We are based in Ramon. This is at the Lake of Constance, close to the border of Germany. At this very place, we developed and produce, or let's say manufacturing the goods now, which we are distributing today in about 30 different countries around the world. Why do we produce the products in Switzerland, as it would be cheaper in Austria and Germany to produce it? For us, it's very important to have the Swiss made, the Swiss branding on our products, because this is very well recognized all over the world and has already a good starting point for discussions and negotiation with companies. And therefore, we are very proud that we are a Swiss company and based in Switzerland. Little bit setting that you understand in which area we are working in. We produce a specialized organic product which is used in the agriculture industry. So with this product, we are emphasize or enhance and sustainable and efficient agriculture for the farmers. This has been done now since more than 40 years, or about, we had developing our own technology. This took about 20 years until we are sure that we're doing the right things. And then since about 20 years, we are internationally distributing these products. You see in this picture, the main products are our soil and plant product, which are specialized for field crops. That means soybean, corn, or other crops. With these two products, we stimulate the microbiological interaction in the soil, and for the plant, we increase the growth and the quality and the quantity of the crop. So that's a little bit the setting. That's the products we are working with. And a little bit to the family business before we start with Brazil. So as mentioned, we are the inventor of this technology. This is our own technology, which we have developed within the family. And we are also the producer of it. So Cyril and myself, you see the picture below. We are in the second generation now, and Cyril is responsible for the technology and the production, and myself, I'm responsible for marketing and sales of the products. So basically, we sell the products via an exclusive distributor. So we produce everything here. We have a contract with country A, and they buy the products from us and distribute it in their country by themselves. We support them with marketing, visits, explanations, some fundings for researchers. And through that, we could have a slim structure in Switzerland, but still support them on a very professional way. Little bit the negative side is that we do not have direct control over the in the market itself. So we have the contact with the distributor, but what happens finally in the market is not, let's say, fully in our control. And we do through that system, we do not have the direct contact to the customer. So as always, via our distributor, the contact to the customers. And when we look now at our distribution, this is all the red dots is a reseller, a distributor of us. And if you look at LATAM, we have in Costa Rica one, he is doing business in Panama and Nicaragua. We have one in Chile, we have one in Uruguay, and we started nowadays with Mexico to have another distribution. But today we will focus on Brazil, because as mentioned in the beginning, this is our main market, and there we have also the most experience in. So maybe why Brazil? Brazil, it's the potential and the size. If you look at the right side, the picture of the country of Brazil, if you put this over Europe, basically all European countries would fit into Brazil. And this is, let's say, for the beginning for us, it was incredible. And we maybe still today, we do not maybe fully understand how big Brazil really is. And that's, of course, a challenge. And the potential of Brazil, it has a climate that allows the farmers to produce up to 3 crops, 3 harvests a year. And that is not like what we have in Europe. You have a winter, you have a break in between. So they do like planting, harvest, and this all year long. This creates some problems, of course, with this excessive usage in the fields. We have a salinity in the soil, and we have a lower production rate of let's say, with soybean and corn. And in this particular case, Penegetic has helped the farmer and still helping the farmer to have a sustainable and long-lasting, let's say, better, how to say, production efficiency. And as the Brazilians usually say, what we do in Europe is gardening, and what they do in Brazil, this is farming. So it's maybe a nice quote to know. How did we start in Brazil? So in this picture, you see my mother and father in the about 20 years ago. And we thought about Brazil to enter this market. And we looked for a potential partner, and let's say per accident, we get in contact with a soya seed producer, which has his own farm. So we got in contact with him. We had some exchanges, phone calls, and then he did the testing for about 4 years until he was convinced about that this new technology brings the necessary effects, or let's say the beneficial effects for them, and then to think about the business. So things went good. We could convince him, luckily. And then together we started to create the market. It's not easy when you have a technology which you have developed by yourself to teach this to your customers. So how did we do this? We started with so-called field days. So where the, let's say, farmer, we used his fields, and we divided in the middle. One part was with our products and the other one without. And then we showed the farmer these results. So we invited the farmers to the fields and say, look at the result. We explained them how the product is working and how they should use the products. Of course, you see on the right side, some of these goods looks not so nice, because to send products to Brazil, you have 1 month on a boat, you have the importation, you have the transport distance in the country itself, and sometimes product don't arrive as you have sent them. And this was surely a challenge for us as well, as a small company, to make sure the products which arrive in Brazil is in the right quality and on the right timing. And so we grow from some farmers, a few farmers, to up to, let's say, we had about 2 years ago an event, there was over than 1,000 farmers in these field days. And we enlarged the brand, or with the success in Brazil, we had, let's say, more investments from our side together with the partner, where we increased the reach of the energetic products. Here in this picture on the left side, you see this is Dr. Ademir Calegari. He's a so-called brand ambassador, which we, let's say, use. He's very well recognized in Brazil. He works for the FAO, and therefore he also an international network. And with his help and helps of others, we could really bring the results and the feedback to more farmers and gathering them together to show them the effect of our products. Furthermore, we together, or basically our distributor in Brazil, had a project called Solo Vivo, the living soil. And the idea there is not only to sell a product, but also to transform knowledge to the farmer. And within this project, we have educated them about taking care about the soil, use some cover crops, take care about this, make some soil analysis. And then one part of it was energetic. So it was really not only a selling instrument, but also an educational instrument to bring knowledge to the farmers in Brazil. This was not the only way with the field days. We also went to the trade shows. And as you can see, these are quite high marketing costs to bring the brand awareness, the products to Brazil, and also to keep the product and the brand in the head of the customer. Because you need to do it, because you're not the only product for the agriculture. There's so many different. And this is a market with high competition, and therefore you have to do this investment to keep up in their mind. For us, it was always important that you also can bring the Swissness also to Brazil, be very precise, everything looks very nice, as this is a part of our, let's say, corporate design or corporate idea. And on the bottom right, you see the picture of another field day, just to give you an overview of how we do the business in Brazil to bring farmers to this night demonstration. And it was, yeah, a lot of creativity you have to motivate the farmer to and get him attracted to the products. And it's not only motivating to the customer, it's also motivating to the team which are representing your brand or our brand basically in Brazil. So we had the idea together with our distributor that we create a Corp energetic. And the idea of this Corp energetic was that the best selling team will win a ticket and can fly to Switzerland for about 5-6 days. And we showed them Switzerland, we motivated them and did some very special events. So when they went back to the other teams, team members, and they tell about, yeah, what we did in Switzerland, so that's a motivation. We had 1 or 2 of them, they never have left Brazil before, and therefore they didn't have a passport. So first of all, to bring them to Switzerland, they had to organize a passport in Brazil that they can flew out. So, and this was a very inspiring idea to do with the team in Brazil. Challenges, definitely for Brazil is the exchange rate, which we see here on this chart for about the last 2 years. So that makes the product more expensive for our distributor and for the customer. Finally, this needs to be considered. This needs to be hedged up to a certain level and to discuss with the partner. Another situation which we get known to it is about the cash cycle. So we had in some cases, we have a cash cycle for up to 365 days. So it's 1 year until we receive the money from the farmer to the distributor and the distributor to us. This is a threat, yes. But as the situation is in Brazil, we get, let's say, known to this, and we found a way to handle this, let's say, situation. And the other thing is registration and importation. This is tricky in Brazil. So you have a state that had, we wanted to register the product, and we had a state where we tried to, or we thought that would be the right one. We found out you could not register the products there. Then you move to the next state. You can register the products there, but the tax laws and other bureaucracy stuff is totally different than to the other states. And that leads me to the support of the SG, where we were very happy that we could do it together to register the product in Brazil. So bottom line is, then if you want to import that, so let's say if you want to import products to Brazil, you need to hold the registration. So we had an option: either we open an office in Brazil that holds the registration, and you have to employ an employee, which you have to pay. And the other option is you find a partner, which we did together with the SG, who registered the products in your name and is up to a certain level your subsidy in Brazil, which you can control. So this is a lot of negotiation and a lot of getting all this information together only to make the registration of the product and to be sure that this process is a good one. The other support from SG, which I would like to highlight, is during our we worked since many years together with the SG, and there was one idea that we enlarged the business to more industrial partners, and we gave SG the task to find us fertilizer companies which would like to add our penetrating technology to their fertilizers and blend it therefore. And SG found us a couple of companies. We flew over, visited all 5 of them, and finally we could sign the contract with one fertilizer company who adds now our products to their fertilizer. This is, yeah, for the support of SG, which we are thankful. Short before I finish, is lesson learned. Looking back, we have maybe made a mistake that we think about Brazil as a country, not a continent. So if you look back at the picture of Europe, we have so many different countries, and more or less for each country you have a different distributor. But for Brazil, we had only one. So looking back, it would, or still makes maybe sense to have more segmentation of this market to have a better penetration. Also for the product portfolio, if you have, let's say, maybe a diverse product portfolio as we have with 6 different products, which all of them is more or less in a different segment, find different distributors who are strong in the specific segment and work with them together, that you have better power in the market, market penetration, rather than to find the one and only distributor who maybe can bring all your products to the market, but it won't happen because it's too diversified in our case. And that's what we change now also. The brand, make clear, because we had a problem with our company name. So in the past, we had Penergetic, and Penner means in slang language something bad. And therefore, we changed the name to P Energetic. So that was something we usually you have in the learning books. Make sure your brand is spelled the right way, you don't make mistakes, but suddenly some situations can appear, but you have to change and to adapt to the situation. And I can only emphasize you to have an opinion leader, a brand ambassador, which is very well known in the region, in the country, and work with them together to have a faster and quicker brand awareness and therefore, yeah, but market coverage. Finally, COVID-19 is for us for sure a different topic. As said, usually we sell the product with field days, with trade shows, with exhibitions. All of that has been cancelled, which is, of course, there's a lack between the communication, especially to the final customers. And it is a special product. It's our own technology. We have to explain it. We have to make them comfortable with it. And this is difficult via digital channels. Nevertheless, during this time, we took the opportunity. We created a new information platform, which is an online platform. We are in the final stage of developing an app. We have also done a couple of webinars just to keep the contact, keep the interest up, and to keep people updated. And yeah, let's say the positive on COVID-19 is that farmers and consumers, as let's say developed, it was already there, but more a tendency to the sustainable, healthy products, which is for us as Penergetic a good development. Okay, that's it. That's our story, what we did in the last 20 years in Brazil. Thank you very much for your attention, and it was a great pleasure to present you today our company and story of Penergetic.
Thank you very much, Cedric, for your valuable insights. We do have 2 questions, and time is running, as Tatiana has said before, but nevertheless, maybe we can answer them shortly. So the first one is how you manage the currency exchange. And the second one, whether the customers are actually willing to pay a premium for the Swiss brand.
Yes, let me start with the second question first. Yes, they are, because they see the result from the neighbors, let's say. They see the result, which we've done a lot of work with the universities, and therefore we could, let's say, price a product as a Swiss product. That's for the second question. For the first question with the exchange rate, you can hedge it via DCDs. You can managing with the bank. You find some hedging plans to make securities. But as we are a family business company, and the others also is a family business, we found a way. Let's say we've supported them with some additional products free of charge, with some other incentives, because we are depending on them as well, as they can selling the products in the market. So we reduced or find ways to work together. And we did also a small price adjustment nowadays, especially if you look, and you can't even see how high are the exchange rates now, and therefore the last tool is the price adjustment, but this is something which let's say the last option is for us.
Okay, thank you very much for the insights again. And I will hand over to Mimmo Mikali from Securiton, who will share his insights with the Latin American markets in a different sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martina, for this opportunity. Thank you, Tatiana. Just to check if you can hear me, presentation is okay. Thank you. Okay, let me talk a little bit about our history. Securiton is part of the group of Swiss Securitas Group. The Swiss Securitas Group is actually well known in Switzerland, company who is known for their security guards that you can see in all events, for example, in sports events or exhibition. And Securiton is a part of this important group that today has more than 100 years, still family owned, and more than 60,000 employees. Securitas Group, or Securiton, is dedicated for security systems, and our production facilities are in Germany, and all the development is based and located in Switzerland, in the headquarters, which is in Bern, capital of Switzerland. Inside the Securitas Group, we have around 40 groups, and one of these group is Securiton, which also has now more than 70 years, and with more than 20 branch office inside Switzerland, but also with quite an important presence on the world market. If we see the world market, we have especially the European market, where our brand is also certified for many of those markets. And we have also a strong presence in the Middle East, in the Asia countries, and of course also Latin America, where we are present since a little bit more than 30 years. Why we choose Latin America? We have specialized products, which is for the fire detection demand. And here we have specialized products, especially for the industry segment, road tunnels, metro station, mining, industry, or also food processing plant. And those are segments that are very important in Latin America, and also strong growing during the past 10, 20 years. What we can offer is also the, all the engineering support and the competence, since in our group we are not only developing the products, we are also installing them, we are selling these products to distributors, to end customers. So we have all this knowledge that we are passing to our business partner worldwide. Our products are also quite reliable and approved, easy to use. That means also that products have a very easy access today using remote access. That means that we are able to support our partner by remote. So there is no need to travel to different countries if there is no really a big problem on the system. So we have this possibility to access all the products via remote from our support center located in Switzerland or even in some other countries. The production is situated in Germany, even that it's quite close to the border of Switzerland. So that means for us at the headquarters, we have 1.5 hours to drive to get to our production facility. But all the development is done in Switzerland. So we have a mix of quality on the product produced in Germany and with Swiss quality on the development. And the private ownership, I think this is also maybe an advantage, because usually we are taking strategical decision, maybe middle and long term. So this is quite stable when you are in a private ownership comparing to other companies where they have a lot of fluctuation inside their group. Our products are quite specific for really specific market segments. So we have the really industrial products, and this is where Securiton is really strong, and also in some of the markets leader. And then we have also the conventional products that maybe everybody of you knows. There are normal fire point detectors that you can see in a shopping center, commercial buildings, and hotel. So we can deliver to our partners really a complete range of fire detection system. What we did before we are entering in the Latin American market, we had to start, of course, with the information. We had to try to get some information about the market. And here we usually worked also together with the support of Switzerland Global Enterprise that has excellent connections and can also help and support the companies with very important information. So first things, of course, we have to know a little bit the size of the market, the different area or segment. We are talking about vertical segments. So there are segments where our products fits very well. Other segments where maybe our products is not very competitive. So these have to be find out. Also, we have to know about the import volume about this market. And of course, we have to know a little bit about the competitors. Who are the competitors? How will be the organization? How will be our position? Do we need distribution channel? Do we sell directly to security integrated companies? This all has to be defined during the evaluation. Then we have to do also a price analysis. We have to know that our products are normally in a medium upscale price range. So there we have to find out who are our competitors before entering the market and do a lot of investments. Of course, competitors' information are in this case very important. And after this, as also Cedric mentioned, we need to do promotion, advertisement. It's important to be present at the exhibition, to do a presentation during conferences. So this is important to be also present locally and to show our faces. Then we need also to understand the consumer needs, how the customer is buying the products, how the mechanism works. We also need to know about the legal aspects, the custom tariffs that also were mentioned before. Especially Brazil has a very, very high taxation and it's quite complicated. So this has to be analyzed quite in detail before entering in the market, see which product fits better in what kind of markets. Then, as we are talking about security system, especially fire detection system need to be certified. So we have to know the local norms in Latin America. Many of the Latin American countries are following US norms, but they also have their own technical standards, safety requirements. So maybe in some of the country, there is a need to certify the product. In order, maybe the European certification is enough to enter in. Then we have to start the pre-selection of the potential business partner. We have to look for existing contacts that this partner has in order to be sure that we really get with this product to the end user. We have to see if the business partner is able to have a stock. Also, if he knows all this logistics way to import the products, many of the companies need to be registered to import products. And it's not always easy to have material on stock because it's an investment. You pay so much taxes when you import the goods. So not every business partner is ready to invest a lot of money, but this is also a very important aspect. Then we have to transfer the technical knowledge, also the marketing tools we need to transfer in order to promote our products. And of course, continuously train the engineering and all the installation department. Then also important to know about your business partner is a little bit the history of the company. We need also to know what are the customer, what kind of references he has, if he is also dealing with other products, who are the other suppliers. So these are information that we also have to take in consideration. Also figures and turnover, cash flow, and also the number of employees. So these are some information that we are looking before we try to close an agreement. Of course, existing contacts to potential customers, this is very important. To get really close to the end user. And everybody wishes a powerful sales organization. This is also a must that the company have a very well structure in order to be able to sell our products. Then we have, of course, also reached some successes during all this year. Museum is also one of those segments that we are very strong, because we use a very special high sensitive smoke detection system. Here we see a very nice the Somaya Museum that belongs to Carlos Slim. We see on the right side the second biggest hydroelectric plant worldwide, which also is an excellent reference for our company. Then we have in the food process industry, BRF, Brazil Food, which is probably the largest exporter of poultry meat worldwide. We have also in the industrial segment a very nice reference. And maybe one of our core business, which is tunneling, mining sector, and subway. We have here Tunnel Costanera in Chile, which is one of the longest tunnel in Latin America. We have different subways protected in Sao Paulo, in Rio de Janeiro, and also in other countries. Tunnel La Línea in Colombia was just opened 2 months ago, and is considered the longest road tunnel in Latin America. So we are proud to have this project as a reference for security on products. And also many other applications in the copper mine field, like Southern Copper, and many other customers in Chile, also in Bolivia, and so on. Conclusion, what has been learned during all this year, middle level negotiation are usually not empowered. So that means we have to know with who we spend the time. Sometimes at the beginning of your visits, you are spending a lot of time with maybe a project manager, sometimes even a sales manager, without to know the owner, the company owner. And so maybe for important decision, it's important that you also know all the people on different level in the company. Then what is fact is always very difficult to make a forecast. We are always pushed by our headquarters in Switzerland, and it's really not so easy because the economies are very unstable. Every year it has some changes due to political elections. Sometimes during a political election, presidential election, there is 1 year before the election and maybe 1 year after the election where the economy is quite not growing, let's say. So this has to be also considered, because this country are very sensitive and are reacting very sensitive when presidential elections are coming. Also, something that we have to transfer to a company in Switzerland is that the time from the first contact on a project to the confirmation on an order may take many years, especially in the tunnel business. Sometimes it takes 5 to 6 years, and in other industrial business it's very normal that you may take 1 to 2 or to 3 years. So it's not just a first contact, one visit, and then you close your project. it really has to be follow up and continuously worked out. Then also have to consider that there is maybe a need to high support to our business partners, since they are constantly changing their personnel, the employees, so we have to train them again, and all this has to be also considered. The complex import procedure generates a lot of delay, so sometimes the projects are decided and then you have a very short time. The business partner has a very short time to import all the products, and but we have to consider that really the import procedures are quite bureaucratic, and that's why this has to be also considered in all your sales activities. And something we learned, negotiation is never at the end. Even we sign the contract, we always say, when the money is on our account, we can say that we really are sure that the project is closed. And flexible time during all the visits. This is very normal that you cannot go with a 2 weeks schedule to Latin America. You have to be very flexible to adjust all your visits when you are traveling. Sometimes you don't have time to see a partner during the afternoon. Maybe you have to invite it for dinner. That is something that it's important. They can postpone your meeting maybe 1 hour before, something that we are maybe not so used in Switzerland. So this is something to consider also, and has been learned during all this year. But at the end, the success of our activities is really the market presence. We have to be present, we have to visit customer, we have to do presentation and seminars, we have to show interest in the culture, we have to speak their language. I think that you can also really get closer to the people, and this I can really confirm. We have also to demonstrate a great deal of flexibility, especially now when we see how the exchange rates of different rates are suffering adjustments. So we have maybe to give a higher discount. Maybe we need to give a better payment conditions. All this we also must support to our business partners. Always important is the contact with key customer. So it's important to visit a business partner, but it's also important to keep contact as soon as it's possible with all the key customer or end user. Building personal relation, it's also very important before really engaging the business. So that means we have to build a relation of trust. And then everything is flowing much better than before. And of course, understand also your partner's place in the local and social hierarchy, and always have different channel. Try to use networks or people that can also help as an intermediary. So in order that you are getting to the end user and finally to close the business. So this was actually a short presentation, a little bit about our history, how we are dealing in Latin America.
Thank you very much, Mimo. As I see from the chat, there are no questions anymore, so I will shortly wrap up. I think it was very interesting to see from both of your presentations that, of course, the economic uncertainties from politics, but of course also from exchange rates fluctuations are sometimes hard to manage, but still success factors that you both mentioned were to be present in the market, also physical whenever possible, and to visit customers to explain the product and position your brand, also in terms of Swiss quality. So I think these are some lessons learned for us. And thanks again to both of you for your excellent presentations and first-hand insights. And we are curious to still follow your journey into hopefully more Latin American markets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Many thanks, Mimo Mikali and Cedric Wilhelm, for sharing your interesting stories and experiences from within the region. We all wish your companies a lot of success in this challenging time. And thank you, Martina, for preparing and moderating this session. Good job. We are now taking a quick break before our final session, just to allow our speakers to switch. Thank you very much.
Hello, Tatiana. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Joyce.
Okay, super. Tell me when you want me to put it. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Where is our speaker? Where is Joyce?
So let me put my video on. Hopefully you see me.
There we go. Well, dear viewers, soccer is a sport that unites nations around the world, and one that is particularly popular all over Latin America. Over the past few decades, its popularity has successfully crossed the gender barrier. However, the world of soccer has not remained free from scandal. We are eager to hear how FIFA is engaging in new efforts to promote clean games, fight corruption, and avoid child abuse, thus creating a lasting impact. It's a tremendous pleasure for me to introduce our next guest, Joyce Cook, FIFA's Chief of Social Responsibility and Education. A very warm welcome, Joyce. We are listening to you.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Dear members of the Latin American Chamber of Commerce, dear guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear viewers, it's a true pleasure to be with you today. A warm thank you for allowing me the opportunity to take part in this webinar with you all. Unfortunately, we cannot be together today in person, as we are all adapting to these new circumstances and ensuring that we take good care with health as our first priority. However, in these difficult times, it is also important to stay connected and to share ideas, indeed to come together as we are doing today, as we all learn to face the pandemic, the challenges and the opportunities it brings, and to look to the future. Latin America is naturally a very important region for FIFA. It's a powerhouse of football, home to some of the greatest teams and the most wonderful talents in the history of our beautiful game. And above all, there is an amazing passion for football that runs throughout the entire region. This incredible passion, it's part of the heartbeat of Latin America. It is a passion that connects people all around the world and a force that goes way beyond football. It can truly move mountains. This incredible power of football and its rich diversity gives us a unique opportunity, a global social impact that reaches way beyond football itself, to our communities and our wider society, to each other, to each and every one of us, irrespective of where we come from, whether we are black, white, or brown, who we love, our age, whether we are a disabled person, marginalized, or from a minority, our faith, or whether we are rich or poor. This provides us both with an opportunity and a responsibility, one thing that we understand well and embrace as new FIFA. As the Chief Social Responsibility and Education Officer, I look after the programs that seek to create positive and lasting change, not only within football, but more widely. In particular today, I'd like to focus on 3 critical areas for FIFA: sustainability in the environment, human rights and anti-discrimination, and safeguarding and child protection. And of course, I'd like to highlight our focus in Latin America as well as globally. When we consider the role of FIFA, many will immediately think of the FIFA World Cup, and certainly the Senior Men's World Cup plays a central role in our strategy. It is the biggest single sporting event in the world, a mega sporting event, with the FIFA World Cup 2018 final in Russia watched by 1.12 billion people on the planet. In fact, more than half of the world watched the tournament, with fans coming from around the world together in Russia to celebrate football and to support their teams. In preparing for the World Cup, we work hard to ensure that the infrastructure required to welcome so many people and the operations and services that support the World Cup are as sustainable as possible. But also, with its unique appeal, the World Cup offers us the chance to impact positively, not only within the host country, but way beyond. The next FIFA World Cup in Qatar is a perfect case in point. For the first time, we have developed a joint sustainability strategy with the host country. And the goals, which were very ambitious when set, are comprehensive. This includes, for instance, green building certification for all host stadiums and the World Cup headquarters, the first voluntary carbon offsetting program that has been established in the region, the Doha metro network that is now operational and already reducing road congestion, vehicle air and noise pollution. And importantly, the great progress made in regards to labour conditions in the region. Our partners in Qatar have developed higher labour standards on World Cup construction sites, and we are now in the process of expanding these standards to other sectors, such as the hotel sector, security providers, logistics, and transportation companies. This impact will remain long after the final whistle as a lasting legacy in the region. And maybe the most striking achievement to date are the far-reaching labour right reforms implemented by Qatar, the recent abolishment of the kafala system. This probably wouldn't have happened if it was not for the exposure and scrutiny that comes with hosting the World Cup. And it is already a huge legacy of the tournament, a commitment of the Qatari authorities 2 years before the first kickoff. Latin America has played a pioneer role in this sustainable approach to FIFA World Cups. It was in Brazil indeed for the FIFA World Cup 2014 that we first developed a sustainability strategy that has since become mandatory for our flagship event. Brazil has therefore provided a positive legacy in terms of the integration of sustainability at mega sporting events and in the development of FIFA's own sustainability management systems. Such strict requirements are now fully integrated at the stage of the bidding process for our major tournaments, including the FIFA World Cup in 2026, which will bring our flagship event, of course, back to Latin America, with Mexico co-hosting the tournament alongside the USA and Canada. We are working together already with the 3 host member associations to plan the implementation of these important commitments, and we are working closely with international stakeholders and experts in that respect. The hosting of the FIFA World Cup 2026 in Mexico will provide an opportunity to further promote responsible economic activity. We are already starting to engage with Mexican NGOs on questions such as labor rights, anti-discrimination in stadiums, accessibility for disabled people, and defending human rights as an integral and critical part of the FIFA World Cup 2026. While the FIFA World Cup is our biggest event, our attention and efforts in terms of sustainability and human rights are a key focus for all of FIFA's activities. Indeed, the FIFA Women's World Cup has become a huge success, and FIFA is working to capitalize on this success to further develop and grow the women's game around the world. The FIFA Women's World Cup last year in France showcased the amazing talents and popularity of the women's game. And this tournament too saw us implement a comprehensive sustainability strategy together with the host nation. This commitment is being strengthened still further with sustainability and human rights requirements integrated within the bidding process for the first time in this tournament. We are now working closely with the selected hosts, Australia and New Zealand, to ensure that the next edition in 2023 is ever more sustainable and inclusive. Turning to the area of human rights more specifically, FIFA is playing a leading role in sports. We adhere to the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and we were the first sports organization to develop our own human rights policy to ensure that we respect and embed human rights throughout our works and activities as part of the DNA of New FIFA and all that we do. Another key focus of my work and a top priority for FIFA is diversity and inclusion. Over recent years, FIFA has taken concrete measures to promote diversity at all levels of the game. The appointment of Fatma Samora as FIFA's first ever Black, female and African Secretary General was a landmark decision by the FIFA President Gianni Infantino following his election in February 2016. His leadership has continued to see New FIFA follow further groundbreaking amendments to the FIFA statutes, our regulations, and requiring that all 6 confederations must elect at least 1 female member to the FIFA Council, our key decision-making body beyond our FIFA Congress. And we now have a much more balanced representation of the different continents at the top table of world football. The FIFA Council comprises 36 members from all over the world, including 6 women. And in the FIFA administration, we see this further reflected with staff coming from 61 different nations from diverse backgrounds, with more than 42% of women appointed to the administration of New FIFA. It is truly a multicultural and truly diverse place, and very much supports our commitment to an equal opportunity recruitment program. Our senior management board is a reflection of this real depth of diversity in New FIFA, both the administration and FIFA's decision-making bodies. Indeed, the management board includes 4 senior women. Besides Mrs. Samora, we count 3 further chief officers, including myself, as the Chief Social Responsibility and Education Officer. I'm also proud to be an openly gay woman at FIFA, as well as a disabled woman in a senior role in sports. And more recently, we also appointed the first Black man to the senior management board. These are all important steps in ensuring that our decisions are taken by a diverse representative group of people. And more recently, we have looked still further at how we can strengthen the game in a broader sense. When we look to our member associations currently, there are 3 female presidents of member associations around the world and 16 female secretary generals out of a total of 211 member associations. We are now working very closely with the member associations and supporting them to ensure that we have set and can achieve our objective by 2022 to have at least 1/3 of FIFA committees being represented by women, and that every member association has at least 1 person dedicated to representing the interest of women in football and women's football itself. To support this objective more concretely, we are investing greatly in training programs for women in football with a tailored approach towards different groups: women in executive roles, women in administrative roles, women in coaching roles, as well as youth leadership programs for young players and referees. Our priority is to provide role models and talent pathways across the game. FIFA has also been busy implementing concrete measures to strengthen diversity amongst our member associations, providing support and guidance and setting best practice, such as the FIFA Good Practice Guidance on Diversity and Anti-Discrimination. In Latin America, for instance, we are supporting individual member associations as they put their own action plans in place to ensure and to promote diversity and inclusion and to fight discrimination wherever it happens. I'd like to turn now to safeguarding and child protection. In addressing violence and abuse in sports, this is another key priority for new FIFA. In recent years, we have developed new tools and programs to help our members tackle this issue and to ensure that football can be played in a safe and supportive environment for everybody, especially the youngest members of the football community. Last year, FIFA launched a dedicated program, a toolkit for our member associations as part of the FIFA Guardians program. It is designed to enhance child safety standards across football. We also provide training and capacity building programs, and we will soon be launching a new safeguarding in sports diploma in partnership with a well-established international university. Not only will this be the first of its kind in sports, this indeed will be the first of its kind in any sector. Further, we are taking steps to embed event safeguarding at all our future FIFA World Cup youth and women's tournaments, including such requirements in the bidding processes too, so that we can ensure that young people and women and any vulnerable adult is protected with preventative measures in place to ensure they have a safe and enjoyable tournament. We have recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, and this will include a collaboration in the areas of child safeguarding preventative measures and the protection of vulnerable youth in football. We are also launching a consultation process together with key stakeholders with the aim to establish an independent, multi-sports, multi-government international entity supported by expert agencies to help sports to investigate abuse cases in the games around the world and to ensure the well-being and care of victims and witnesses that bravely choose to come forward. Such agreements and goals show our commitment as new FIFA to ensure that we remain at the forefront of social responsibility in sports and our own obligations in this regard as the governing body of football, but also in our reach and impact to the wider society and to use football as a tool to support the achievement of public policy objectives too. Indeed, in May of this year, the World Health Organization and European Commission joined forces with FIFA to support women and children at risk of domestic violence by launching the Safe Home campaign. We were delighted by the social media response around the world, which had the highest interest across Latin America. And we'd like to pay this moment a particular thanks to our Latin American member associations who helped amplify this important message and help and advice and helplines locally and globally. In turning lastly to the COVID response, the COVID pandemic is a central theme of the discussion today. The entire world is facing an unprecedented health challenge, and FIFA's role is to ensure a global and coordinated and collective response from the global football community. Unity, solidarity, and a spirit of compromise are key and at the very center of football and its values. In partnership with the World Health Organization, FIFA has launched several awareness-raising initiatives to provide practical recommendations to tackle the spread of COVID-19. And it was important to lead by example with football, thanks to its unique impact. We were able to play a key role. Central to amplifying these messages were our member associations, clubs, and players from around the world and in many different languages. There again, the response in Latin America has been astounding. But football, like pretty much every sector of society, is also suffering a lot from this pandemic. The suspension of football activities has led to huge financial distress for many of our member associations and their respective football infrastructures and communities. This is why FIFA has launched a global relief plan, which makes grants and loans available up to $1.5 billion to our member associations to assist the football community at this critical time. Part of these grants are specifically dedicated to the ongoing development of women's football, and we are determined as FIFA to ensure that the women's game is not only protected, but enabled to further grow around the world. This relief plan will not solve every problem, but as the world governing body, it is our duty to do the utmost to support those most in need and help them restart football activities and the joy it brings wherever we possibly can. And of course, to protect the future of our beautiful game. In Latin America, we know, for instance, that many football federations will use this much needed support to continue paying their staff and to implement COVID tests for players and officials, which are critical for their own protection and well-being and for the continuation of football competitions wherever possible. These are just a few of the examples that new FIFA and football is doing beyond the pitch and to try to create a positive social impact on society around the world. I could continue talking for a very long time on this topic, but we are here to exchange. So I now very much look forward to hearing your views and your questions. And thank you so much once again for listening and for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, and back to you, Tatiana.
Thank you very much, Joyce. This is truly inspiring and I may say also very encouraging. I have a question that I prepared ahead of time. Equal pay in sports and professional life is something that women all over the world have been campaigning and fighting for decades. Do you see a chance that women's football could be the first sport where equal pay is actually achieved? And what will it take?
So thank you for your question, first of all, Tatiana. I have to say right up front, I'm not the women's football chief, so I'm not the expert in this area. But what I can say is it is really important that we build a sustainable women's football around the world. And that has to be our key focus and priority. Of course, we always look to the future and to measures that provide equality and inclusion, but our key and aim is to grow the game globally. When we look to women's football at the moment, if we look with an honest heart, there are certain parts of the world where there's been a great deal of investment and where there has been a great deal of progress in the women's game. But there are many parts of the world where we have much to do. So that remains our key focus and, of course, the key priority for our president.
Thank you. I have another question. In the US, male football has never reached the same degree of popularity as American football or baseball. I mean, talking about soccer. While female soccer is increasingly popular since the US team won 4 times world champion. Why do you think that is? And how do you promote female soccer in Latin America?
Okay, so I'd take that question in 2 parts. So in answer to the first part, again, we very much hope that the Men's World Cup in 2026 and the lead up to it will certainly have a great impact on the popularity of men's football, men's soccer in the US. And indeed, we're seeing some early indicators that is very much the case. In regards to women's football in Latin America, this again turns to the very important part that we invest and grow the game. And again, as I said, I wish I had the chief women's officer here for football, women's football, because she is much better equipped than I am to answer these questions. But nevertheless, we will keep investing and encouraging, and there is a lot of great activity and remarkable men and women that are helping to progress the women's game in Latin America.
Wonderful. By the way, our chamber has already had a first talk with your collaborators about perhaps developing some activity together next year. Let's hope we can all do that very shortly once the pandemic is over and real events will again be possible. So the discussion, the dialogue is open, and we can just be hopeful. Actually, a question that has been put to me by WhatsApp. Can you say something about the former Argentine president, Mauricio Macri, and his role at the FIFA Foundation?
Yes, he has taken an executive chairman's role at the FIFA Foundation, particularly focusing around education and our Football for Schools program. And I am not directly involved with the FIFA Foundation, but I am very aware that he has been playing an active role in helping to embed all of the programs, and my colleague Yuri is looking very closely at the programs we invested in the past and our next steps, and indeed when we can restart football, which we all want so imminently to happen in a mindful way, putting health first, to really roll out the Football for Schools program. So that will be a critical component.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any question from our many viewers. All right, then I want to thank you once again, Joyce Cook, for taking the time to be with us today and provide great input on the important work that you are doing. We all wish you the best of luck and success, and of course we will follow all the activities, everything that's going on at FIFA, and thank you again for everything.
Thank you very much for giving New FIFA the opportunity, and also I look forward, I know Miriam's on the call somewhere, that how we work together going forward is very exciting. So thank you to you and everybody on the call today. It's been a real pleasure and a true honor. So thank you.
The honor's been on our side. Thank you,
that's
Joyce.
kind.
All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Dear viewers from Switzerland and from across the Atlantic, we have almost reached the end of this webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you found this interesting and worthwhile. As mentioned before, we will have the recording of this webinar on our homepage shortly. Once again, a big thank you to our sponsor, Switzerland Global Enterprise, and I say goodbye for now. Stay safe. And I'm handing over for closing remarks to Linda Walker von Grafenried, Vice President of our Chamber. Thank you. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Tatiana. Thank you. It is a great pleasure for me to say a few words of thanks to our members and friends for participating in our Latin American Day. In particular, on behalf of the Chamber, I would like to thank Switzerland Global Enterprise, our sponsor for this event, for their tremendous support. Thank you so much, Thomas Först. We were very sorry to have missed seeing everyone personally, and especially missed our friends from the bilateral chambers who were able to join us last year. Nevertheless, we thank them for preparing the special virtual greetings that we showed you at the beginning of the event. And fortunately, many of you are participating virtually. We very much look forward to developing and expanding our relationship to the mutual benefit of all of the chambers, and hopefully we will have an event next year when we all can see each other again in person. I also find these, I always find these discussions and opinions on Latin America at our Latin American Day, and especially the testimonials, very enriching and insightful, and hope that you have profited as much as I have. We have 2 more webinars planned for this year, and many new and exciting ideas in the pipeline for 2021. We encourage you to send us your constructive feedback, as we welcome such interaction and will take it into account for our future planning. Last but not least, I would like to thank all of the speakers as well. Of course, Tatiana Gaspar, who managed to smoothly arrange the transition from a physical event to this virtual event that we hope that you enjoyed and have profited from as much as I have. Thank you.
Goodbye.